Okay, I'm gonna try to do short videos and like put them all together as one so you don't have to watch like hours of stupid stuff. But anyway, a lot of people wanted me to share a video of how I redo stuff. This rag has the white lightning, Dixie Belle's white lightning, and all I do is I clean the piece real well because of any dirt, grime, grub. I scrub it down real good with the white lightning. Then I had sanded a little bit because the polyurethane was buckled up. It was all lumpy, so I sanded that just to flatten it out and make it smooth before I apply my paint. But all I'm going to do is scrub it down with the white lightning right now and then put a coat of paint on it. Okay, I'm going to start applying some paint. I'm going with Spanish moss, which is sort of like a grubby greenish color. But anyway, I'm trying to show, this is hard. I use distilled water. Almost need like 4 hands. I spray my paintbrush with the water. The reason I use distilled water is because when I go back into the paint, distilled water has no contaminants, therefore it won't grow any kind of mold or bacteria. You won't contaminate your paint. So I always use distilled water, which it's really cheap. The cheapest place I found it was Giant at like 80 cents a gallon. But I put that in my spray bottle. I wet my brush first with the distilled water, and then I just start painting. And if I get like where it's too heavy, leaving like the brush marks I didn't want, then I spray the paint and I just keep on going. Trying to think of things to tell you that I've learned as I've been doing this. The Dixie Belle I found out of all the products I've used, and I've used so many. Waverly, Junk Monkey, Lowe's. I've used so many different kinds of chalk paints, and so far I found that Dixie Belle gives me the best coverage, the smoothest of, like, it has like the self-leveling, so it gives me like the smoothest coat, the smoothest, if that makes sense. So okay, now I'll come back after I get more of this painted. Okay, and again, I guess you can see these brush marks. If I see like the brush marks, like I have it on a little too heavy, then I just spritz it with the distilled water and it smooths right out. And like being outside, you don't have to worry about like if you get like little I'll show you when it's done and dry, little specks of something, a little hair, a little fuzz. People call them paint boogies. When it's all dry, you just take a piece of sandpaper and you put your finger, and you just go around, touch up any type of little lumps. Hey, say hi. Alright, I'm not sure if you can see real well, but this gives you an idea. Any kind of spindles that I have, I always go this way on them, but that right there gives you an idea on the coverage that this gives me. That's why I love this Dixie Belle paint. It gives me really great coverage. Sometimes it's just easier to do it in the house, because then you don't have all the distractions. Oh my gosh. So it's dry, and now I'm going to do some light distressing around the edges. And you want to pick edges where normal wear would occur. distress. Oh, and the paper I use is pretty fine. This is 180 grit. And if you take off too much, just gotta, you can touch it up easily. Just like if there's a big gouge or something, you just put a little more paint on there, smooth it out, and you're back to the original piece. So I sanded all the edges, distressed, like I said, the edges where you'd have normal wear. And then after I was done doing that, I took a wet wash rag and went on and did some wet distressing, like around the spindles, spinning it, cleaned off all the dust. And I think at this point, I'm going to use the glaze and go in on some of the edges to emphasize like a couple of the edges, shadow it, like this edge, in on these with the glaze. So I'm going to put that on and then wipe it off and see what that gives me. Sorry about the goat screaming. So I put the Van Dyke Brown glaze, and again I'm going to wet my brush. And I'm going to go in, try to offload some of this. And I'm going to go into the edges, like I said. Just the edges. To define that area. To make it look grungier. Okay, that's too much water. There we go. That's better. That's better. Okay, and I'm going to go around all this edge. And then I'll come back and show you how I wipe it off. Okay, so now you spray your rag, get it wet, again with this distilled water, so you don't have any kind of contamination. And then just wipe it. Wipe where you put it. I put it in the crevices where you would have dirt, grime, gather. I put it in all those crevices. And if the sun's drying it quick, and then if you you need more, you can apply more. Now I'm going to work on the drawer. And all I did with the drawer, I took the hardware off, scrubbed it down with the white lightning, and I'm going to use the color drop cloth on the drawer. I'm just going to do the same way I did the table. Just put it on, spray my brush first, spray it, smooth out any brush lines, and let it dry. Alrighty, I have it all finished. The drawer with drop cloth. Once it's dry, I'll do a little bit of distressing, and then I think I'm gonna put some shadowing like in the creases. Okay, this is dry, so I'm just gonna do like some light distress sanding on the edges. And again, I'm using that 180 grit, very fine, because you don't want to have a bunch of marks from the sandpaper being too rough, being too coarse. So I just hit the edges where you'd see wear with really fine paper. Oh my goodness, that's thunder. Here it is, finished with all my distressing. Like I said, anywhere you see normal wear on the outer edges of everything, that's where I sanded with that very fine sandpaper. I'm trying to decide if I want to do some of that Van Dyke brown in there or just wax it and be done with that. I was going to let it go with the distressing I had on the edges, but actually hubby said, no, put more distressing at the knobs. People pulling them in and out. I thought it was a good idea. So I take a rag. When I do the Van Dyke, I spray the rag, spray the brush, the Van Dyke brown, and I just go in where I want the definition, the where you would see dirt, grime, dust laying. It'll give us a more definition. Then I'm going to take the wet rag, I'm going to wipe it with the wet rag. And if you see, like, okay, this thing here, right here, you just spray it with your distilled water. And it comes off. There, I did more up there. And the drawer's ready for waxing and the hardware to be put back on. Finished. I wasn't happy with how it looked in the stand with that color of Spanish moss. The drawer just stood out too much. So now I'm taking the only product that Dixie Belle has that is not water soluble or soap and water cleanup is the No Pain Gel Stain. That's the only product that they have that is not soap and water soluble for cleanup. And I'm going over this. I'm hoping it darkens it and goes better with that stand. Now I'm just going to take a rag and wipe it off lightly. I don't want a lot of it to lay in the cracks and crevices. I'm just wiping it down. Now that it's finished, I'm taking a wax brush, it's an oval wax brush, and clear wax, and I'm just gonna put it on the sides and the legs. It gives it a good seal, plus it also richens the color too, makes it look nicer. I'll leave this sit on there for a little bit, and then I'll come back with a dry cloth and buff it off. Alright, I'm going to buff it off now, and when I do that, I just use a dry, clean rag, and I just wipe it. And I wipe it till it feels smooth. Like, you can feel there's no drag. It's nice and smooth. That wax is nice. Gives it a nice, smooth, rich finish. That's all I do. Now the top, I'm going to use gator hide because I'm guessing that this is going to be used as an end stand, so it's going to probably hold a lamp, glasses, cups, those type of things. So I want to give the top a coat of gator hide, which I'll show you how I do that next. Now I'm going to put the gator hide on the top. I did all the waxing on the sides and the legs, and now I'm going to do the gator hide on the top. Like I said, I think there's going to be different items on there: coasters, cups, glasses, a lamp. So I sprayed my applicator sponge with distilled water. Like I said, distilled water, so you don't contaminate by dipping back in your container. And then I just start applying it. Nice even strokes. I hope you can see I'm trying to do this and make a video at the same time. So I just take it across lightly with the gator hide, just like that, across the top. And I always go the same direction, full strokes. I don't start and stop anywhere else, and I try to keep it nice and even. I applied a thin coat of the gator hide with the applicator sponge. I've already done this with a brush. I've already put the gator hide on with a brush, and I got upset with the results because I had like lines. So I took a steel wool and I just went across it with steel wool, and it took it all up. It looked nice then. So you can, if you have a spot where you're not happy with it, or it's heavier one spot, you can steel wool, real fine steel wool, then that way to smooth it out. But that's the gator hide on the top, and the sides are waxed. I gotta finish the drawer. Finally finished and going to the store.